Matt Rule just does not have a clue on how to run an offense.
Luke Getsky should be fired. He should be fired today.
I'll stand by you. Micah, bro, you got smoke.
Welcome to FaZe Fantasy Live with your host, Lonnie Z.
Hello, everybody. This is Jake Hansen from FaZe Fantasy Live. We are going to recap week 2. Today I am solo. Lonnie Z's taking a day today. Busy man's been he's been taking care of everything for FaZe Fantasy. He does all the waiver wire. He's been doing everything, all the editing. So he's taking a day today. He will be back. We will be back this week to preview week 3. So first things first, I'm going to start off with the top 2 scores of the top three positions: quarterback, running back, receiver. So quarterback this past week, the top 2 scores: Kyler Murray, Jalen Hurts. Kyler Murray went off. Great game. Alvin Kamara shocking everybody. First 2 weeks, nobody would have thought. I mean, we know he's a great player. A lot of big runs, a lot of big plays with him, a lot of little dump offs. But with 47 points, and Devon Achane had 29, and James Cook was right there with 28. For receivers, Marvin Harrison Jr., the rookie, went off 32 points. DK Metcalf had 31, and then I'll add one more. Malik Neighbors had 31. For tight ends, Hunter Henry had a great game, and George Kittle had a great game, 21 and 20 points. So this past week, shockers, I think, everywhere. I think this whole week was really unpredictable. I think, like, if you had to pick them, I think you were wrong 50%, probably 75%. Like I said, I mean, there's a lot of games that was a toss-up. A couple games that I think teams should have won. A couple games teams should have lost, and they lost. Right now, Bryce Young just got benched this morning for Andy Dalton. If you watch the last 2 Carolina Panther games, it's not a shocker at all. I think it's too big for him. It's over his head. A new coach wasn't the answer. Hope, if he does get a chance, if Dalton gets hurt, maybe that's what Young needs, sit on the bench, take some time to think and take the playbook down. Yeah, it hasn't been good for him at all. So let's start the first game. Let's go over the first game. That's going to be the Raiders and the Ravens. Great game for the Raiders, great game. I mean, if you sit here and you say, let's say a quarterback, 276 passing yards, 1 TD, 1 interception. The other quarterback, 247 passing yards, 1 TD, 1 interception. You wouldn't know which one that was. Minshew and Jackson pretty much had the same line, For Baltimore, I think it's just I don't know if it's offensive coordinator. I don't know if Lamar Jackson, I don't know if they're all clicking with the offense coordinator. The biggest thing, they had a great game with Zay Flowers. He had 22 fantasy points. Lamar Jackson had 17 fantasy points. Derrick Henry had a touchdown, 84 yards, not too bad. The tight ends, Mark Andrews, likely was nowhere to be found. I think it's the thing with the Ravens are just having a hard time with receivers right now. They have one receiver, Zay Flowers, and for the Raiders to come back like they did, Minshew, he stayed strong. He only had 13 fantasy points. Devontae Adams, 29 fantasy points, went off. Had a great game. Brock Bowers, the rookie, stepped up, 18 fantasy points, 98 yards receiving. Great game. I don't know if I would go as far as saying the Ravens are a must-win team or they're in trouble, but you don't want to go down. You don't want to lose 3 games, even 4 games. You don't want to lose 2 games or 3 games and then be back. You have Cincinnati there. Cincinnati's 0-2, but Cincinnati, close game against Chiefs. Cleveland, I don't know. Cleveland right now is a shocker to me. I thought they were a little better defense-wise all around. They're 0-2. The Steelers are right there, 2-0. So Ravens, they can't go too far behind. That game was a shocker, but then if you really look at it, it really wasn't the way it played out. But the Raiders, stay strong. Zamir White, the Alexander Madison, the running game is, I don't know, maybe it's because they played 2 tough teams in the last 2 weeks, but 9 carries for 24 yards ain't doing it for the Raiders. So, But a good win for the Raiders. Good win for Antonio Pierce. Next game will be the Chargers and Panthers. The leading fantasy scorer on the Chargers, there was 2 tied. J.K. Dobbins, 17 for 131 yards, 23 points. Quentin Johnson, 22 points. He had 5 receptions, 51 yards, 2 touchdowns. That's pretty good. Herbert found him. Not as great for Herbert, 130 passing yards, 13 fantasy points. He had 2 touchdowns, 1 pick, but I thought he would have did a little bit better against the Panthers. He just looks like he's just doing enough just to move the Chargers along. J.K. Dobbins, we were questionable. Should we get him? Everybody's going to get him. Do you think he's going to be good? He'd had a great game. So I guess there's no more, of second guessing him. I guess, don't second guess him until he blows it. Bryce Young had 2 fantasy points, 84 yards. It's bad. I mean, you kind of feel bad for the kid, but it's pretty bad. Chuba Hubbard, 11 fantasy points, 64 yards. Deontay Johnson, not good at all. Adam Thielen, not good at all. With Andy Dalton coming in next week, I think Deontay Johnson will be a good play. Dalton's a passer. He gets the ball out of his hand, so I don't think that'd be bad. So, but Chargers won that game 16-3. They're 2-0 with Harbaugh, so I mean they're a clean team now. Just Chargers. You're watching that game. I mean they're just going to get better. So here's a shocker. This is pretty much a shocker for the week. I mean there's a couple of them, but Dallas, Derek Carr, 22 fantasy points. Probably could have got more. 243 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick. He went off. Derek Carr's just been making the passes. Only 16 attempts. Kamara had 115 rushing yards, 3 rushing touchdowns, and 1 receiving touchdown. Crazy. 4 touchdowns, 47 fantasy points. That's nuts. It's nuts. I think everybody took New Orleans for granted, not really knowing. They didn't really change the team. They didn't really. I mean, the way they looked last year wasn't good at all. But, Rashid Shaheed, 496 yards, 20 fantasy points. Great game for him. Tight ends was a slow week for tight ends. Taysom Hill, Zach Wood, nothing. Only 1 catch for a tight end this week for New Orleans. Cowboys, come on, man. Like all the Cowboys fans after that first game against Cleveland was, we're here, Super Bowl. Like every Cowboy you talk to, I know some Cowboy fans, they had a lot of hopes for, but Dak Prescott had that bag. He got the bag. He lost the bag. He lost the bag this past week. I know a lot of teams didn't play too great this week that been and then did in the first week, but Dallas got killed against this team, a team that nobody thought they would be 2-0. Nobody thought Carr could be able to do what he's doing. Dak had 2 interceptions. He had 15 fantasy points. Rico Dowdle, he led the league, or he led the game with 7 rushes, 30 rushing yards. And Zeke, 6 for 16. Zeke looked so slow. And he looked so slow. He looked like a linebacker running. He looked like a linebacker running up the middle, just running to the middle of the field. It was pretty sad. I couldn't believe it. I thought it was a linebacker. I thought it was a Dallas linebacker. It was crazy. But I don't know. It's the second week. CD had 90 yards, 1 touchdown, 19 fantasy points. One of their tight ends, Schoonmaker, will probably be a good pickup this week. Tight end with Ferguson out. If Ferguson stays out, 6 receptions, 43 yards, 10 fantasy points. So they used them. They just because Ferguson wasn't in, they still used the tight end. But that was a big shocker for Dallas. That's a big loss. A game like that, getting just routed at home, first home game. It was pretty bad. Pretty bad. I know Dallas fans are quiet this week. Can't really talk. My team, my team didn't do great either, but this is pretty bad against a team that wasn't even supposed to be here like that. Wasn't even supposed to be playing like that. Tampa Bay and Detroit, 20-16. Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay pretty much had that game all day. It seemed like that they pretty much handled it. Baker, 19 points. I think everybody got excited for Baker this week. Everybody was trying to stack him and Evans. Evans did not have a great game. 42 yards. Chris Godwin, he's playing the best he has in 2 years since his knee injury. 27 fantasy points, 117 yards. Rashad White, quiet day, 18 rushing yards. Bucky Irvin actually had more rushing yards than Rashad White. And Rashad White's 1 reception. So that's a little shock. He had like 70 yards receiving last week. So no tight ends getting the game this week. No Cade Otton. I was looking at Cade Otton last week while picking him up. I thought maybe Tampa Bay would start using him. No. I think on the Detroit side, too, was a little disappointing. I know a lot of people had Laporta, hope for Laporta, 7,900 on FanDuel. He had 3 points. Amon St. Brown went off. I think everybody's seen that coming, with Tampa Bay struggling defense in the backfield. 25 points for him. Jameson Williams had a great game, 14 points, 79 yards. And Jahmyr Gibbs and Montgomery pretty much tied with fantasy points, 17 each. They both had a good game. Jahmyr Gibbs had 84 rushing yards, 22 receiving yards. So, and Goff just still low, 13 fantasy points. I thought Detroit don't really look as powerful as last year. Their offense, you think they would have, especially with Jameson Williams now playing more, getting him the ball more. But I don't know. It just seems, you think with two good receivers, almost 100 yards each, 2 great running backs like that, you think we'd be scoring over 20 points. But for the past 2 weeks, they scored the week before they scored 20, and then this week they scored 16. It's not as powerful. I thought they would have handled this game. I thought they would have won by touchdown or 2, but man, the Buccaneers they just do enough. They just do enough. A lot of people wrote off their defense this year. Same defense. They still have, it's just there's a Baker's doing what he can to win the game. He's doing what he can to win the game. This one was a little disappointing. Colts, Packers. Malik Willis, 122 passing yards. That's all he had to do. 12 points, 14 attempts. They didn't, they ran. Josh Jacobs went off. That boy, for what his stats were, his fantasy points weren't there. He fumbled the ones. He had 151 rushing yards, 32 attempts. If Jordan Love was in the game, they wouldn't have ran him that much. There's no way. So they used him, but 17 fantasy points. You thought he would have had a lot more, but really no receptions at all. Dontavion Wicks had the lone touchdown for Green Bay, 26 receiving yards. Dobbs had 9 fantasy points for 63. And then Jaden Reed had a slow day. He had a bunch of ankle issues, and they didn't think he was going to play, but he was questionable. But, they just they did enough. Like the game plan was just enough to beat the Colts. Colts offense was stale. Jonathan Taylor had a 100-yard game, but Anthony Richardson looked lost at times, had 3 picks, 1 touchdown. They made Green Bay's defense look way better than they did in the first game against the Eagles. Anthony Richardson looked lost. I don't know if he was trying to do too much for himself or what, but he didn't look like himself. It was probably his worst NFL game yet. I know there's only probably 5 or 6 of them, but Alec Pierce had a 56 yards, touchdown, 16 fantasy points. Michael Pittman, nobody to be found again. It's kind of upsetting, with Pittman. I thought he was going to be a big part of with Anthony Richardson. I thought he was going to be a big player this year. I had high hopes for him. He probably went top 3 rounds. It's just not looking good for him right now. Adionne Mitchell had 1 reception. Thought he would be a little bit more, but Joshua Downs will be back next week. Let's see. Let's go. Let's see what happens. But I know Richardson will bounce back. It's not going to be too, he will. But the thing is, I'm a little afraid that maybe he'll try to run a little more. He only had 30 yards rushing this past week. I hope he doesn't try to run more and try and do it all like Lamar. It's like it's like going back to that Baltimore game. What's going on with Lamar? You know, I didn't really bring it up because we always do about Lamar, and it's not always his fault. But you know, you kind of look at Lamar and it's like something's missing with that team, and it has for the last year or two. And you would have thought with Likely the way he played against the Chiefs, you think, okay, well, look at Likely as his receiver. And it's like then right now with Richardson, you know, you don't want him to try to do as much and run all the time like Lamar does, because Lamar tries to make plays and do it, but he has to do it on his feet. And I just don't want to see him do that, you know. And to go back in the beginning when I started about Cleveland's actually 1-1. They actually won this past week. It slipped my mind for some reason, talking about Dallas, but yeah, Cleveland won this week. It's 18-13. Cleveland against Jaguars. The Jaguars is the team I was actually thinking about. I'll start with the Jaguars. Jaguars, you know, I don't know. Doug Peterson, it seems like he's each team for 1 or 2 years. I hope he stays a little bit long, you know, but Trevor Lawrence got his bag and 13 fantasy points. Seems like it's like when the Jaguars, it just seems like Lawrence needs to play a weak team, you know, like they have to play a team that's just way on the bottom, a Panthers or a New England Patriots right now, and just like a low team, you know, for him to excel. You know, they have to play a lower defense for him to excel. And it seems like if they play any kind of team that has any talent, that good talent and good defense, that top 10 defense, it just seems like he struggles. You know, like Travis Etienne Jr., I thought he would have been, but, you know, 14 fantasy points, 1 touchdown. Brian Thomas Jr., he's doing what I thought. The first 2 games he's been doing good. He led the team this week with 94 receiving yards, no touchdowns, but 11 fantasy points. You know, I know they got a big blow in the morning with Evan Ingram went out with a hamstring while he was warming up. I know that was a big blow, and it hurts when you don't, you know, because you have your game plan all week, and then when somebody gets hurt in pregame, that sucks. But they used their tight end. Brenton Strange still has 64 receiving yards, so 9 fantasy points. Deshaun Watson for Cleveland side, 106 passing yards, no touchdowns. He had 15 fantasy points. You know, he did what he could do to win. Jerome Ford, I had a big game for him. I thought he would be big. 7 fantasy points. Deontay Foreman actually had more carries for 42 yards, 6 fantasy points. Cleveland's just not a big scoring team. Jared Jeudy, Elijah Moore, 12, 10 points. You know, Amari Cooper, big 0. He had 4 fantasy points, but for him, that's just, I don't know. It's just teams, you know. I know they don't have Njoku. They had Jordan Akins. He had one reception, 2 fantasy points. So Cleveland won this game, but it doesn't show like they're here for anything else other than just no playoff run. Now it's all eyes on Deshaun Watson. What's he going to do? And with this other bull crap coming up on him, I think it's pretty much a Deshaun Watson year. The watch. Are they going to drop him? They're going to keep him. Guaranteed money. It's guaranteed money, but are Cleveland just going to just let him go? I mean, the way he keeps playing, he doesn't even look like he wants to be there at all. But yeah, Cleveland won that game 18-13. All right. So here's the big one. Here's the one that we were going to have a good little talk about tonight. Got to get me a little sip before I talk about this game. Niners-Vikings. Damn, man, I tell you. You know, Vikings have our number at home in Minnesota. They had our number last year. You know, I know we lost to them last year, but we still made the Super Bowl. Don't forget. But we just got, you know, they beat us. You know, they beat us, man. The Vikings had good defense. Brian Flores, you know, don't be surprised if that man is up for another coaching job next year. I mean, he needs their defense to be this way, to play this way. They were running around the whole game field. They were on him, on Purdy. You know, Purdy still had a 300-yard game, 319 yards, 18 fantasy points, 1 pick, 1 touchdown. I think the interception was 2 interceptions. They called one a fumble, but it was an interception. So one was tipped, one just came out of his hand. Jordan Mason had a great game, 20 points, 100 yards rushing. Debo, 21 points. And Kittle had a great game with 76 yards, touchdown, and 20 points. Sam Darnold had a good game, had 20 fantasy points, 268 passing yards, 2 touchdowns. Hey, he had one pass for 97 yards. JJ. That one pass, that's pretty much like JJ had 133 yards. So he had 33 yards after that pass. He did what he had to do. I know a lot of people probably on me about this game or whatever, but that was a good win by Minnesota. That was a good win. Darnold did what he had to do. Their defense did great. The running game was a little bit. Ty Chandler still had 82 rushing yards, only 8 fantasy points. Aaron Jones had a fumble. He had 10 fantasy points. He had some receptions and catches. JJ had a great game, 26 fantasy points. Like I said, he had 4 catches, 133 yards before he got hurt. Jay Naylor had 14 fantasy points, had a touchdown at the end of the game. Tight end, Munt, nothing. I know I talked about this on the last one on the preview, and I was, talking about Darnold and everybody, saying this, that, saying what I said. What I'm saying is I don't think Justin Jefferson is going to lead the league in receiving this year with Darnold as quarterback. Darnold had a good game. He had 268 passing yards. With JoJo Addison in, JJ's not going to get 100 yards every game. So that's what I'm saying stats-wise. He's not a 300 and 350-yard passing quarterback. He's not. He had one throw for 97 yards. But the Vikings don't need him to do that. He made some good passes, and he had a great game. But if he keeps playing this way, the Vikings are going to win a lot of games. But it was a bad loss for the Niners. They had injuries with McCaffrey out. It's a big blow. Big blow. It's just Shanahan, I think, tries to trick everybody, tries to be funny, and it's just a bunch of bull, man. It's like, play the game. Play the game. Stop trying to be cocky. You got a block punt. You freaking 1 yard line. You went for it. Should have just got the points. It's like, be smart about it. It's like you try to out class everybody and out fool everybody. Sometimes it don't work that way. Just play the game, Shanahan. Some of your play calls were garbage. A lot of your play calls were garbage. And I don't know if it was because Minnesota's defense was that good or you're just trying to outsmart them, but you outsmarted yourself. That's the problem. And then you got Debo. He was being humble about it. He's out now. And you got Jordan Mason. He can't catch a pass out of the backfield. So you lost that with McCaffrey gone. So, our whole playbook, everything's changed. You finally use Kittle. And the Niners they just I think they try to outsmart everybody, but they outsmart themselves. That's the problem. I seen a interview today with Debo and Ayuk, and Debo, okay, we lost. We knew they were going to have a lot of blitz packages and all that. Ayuk, nothing to say. No training camp all year. You look like dog shit, and you have nothing to say. It's unreal. I just can't believe. And show up, man. You got all that money now. You want to play like what? Come on, let's go. Seattle, New England, man, they had that chance at the last. Went to OT. Seahawks won that game. Geno Smith, 327 yards, 20 fantasy points, had a good game. Zach Charbonnet, he had only 38 rushing yards, 1 touchdown, but he had 17 fantasy points. The receivers went off. I had Jackson Smith and Jigba in a game. He had 117 receiving yards, 26 fantasy points. DK went off 129 receiving yards. Tight ends, Noah Fant, nothing, nowhere to be found. Jacoby Brissett, 149, 10 fantasy points. Ramon J. Stevenson. Moving forward, you got to use him. You got to use him. He played a good defense, and he, had 81 yards rushing, but 1 touchdown. Had some receiving yards. Jalen Polk, 1 touchdown, 12 yards and then Hunter Henry had a great game, 109 yards. Jacoby Brissett, that's his bread and butter is tight end. He doesn't really throw too deep. He likes the little dink and dunks. For the tight end, that's perfect. Next game, New York Jets and Tennessee. It wasn't too bad of a game. I think Tennessee had that chance. They had the chance. Jets still don't look too powerful. Aaron Rodgers is 176 yards, 2 touchdowns. Brees Hall had a great game, 24 points, 62 rushing yards. That Braylon Allen, though, he looked good. And it's like Brees Hall, he's only 3 years in. I know he got hurt a couple years ago. But it's like you think they would use him more. But Braylon Allen, they drafted, looking good. Had 33 rushing yards, 1 touchdown. Garrett Wilson, 4 receptions, 57 yards, 10 points. Rodgers, if Rodgers ain't going to sling it like he used to, might be a little rough to use Wilson. I know a lot of owners probably got Wilson in the first, second round. Second round more likely, we'll see how it goes when he gets used to the system more. But 192 passing yards, one touchdown, 1 interception for Will Levis, 13 points. Will Levis not looking too great right now. He has a good team around him, a good offense around him. Tony Pollard, 15 fantasy points, 62 rushing yards. I thought he would have threw a TD in there, but Calvin really had a great game, 24 points, 1 touchdown, 77 receiving yards. DeAndre Hopkins, he's hurt. They said his knee. He has some torn cartilage in his knee. He had only 1 catch. Tied in Okanako. He had three catches. Jets won 24-17. The Jets, I thought they would win. I know me and Lonnie both thought they would win the game. Jets defense played. I thought they would play, a little bit better, and they did. Titans had a chance to win this game. But Jets got it 24-17. Next game is going to be New York Giants and the Washington Commanders. That one was slow. If you picked the under, you won. I think I picked the under on that game. I just thought I didn't think it was going to be a high-scoring game. I thought it would have been a little better, to be honest. I thought it would have been a little better. It just seems with Jalen Daniels, I thought it would have been a little bit more firepower for him. He struggled throughout. It took a while. He took a while to get going. He still didn't have a great game. I think it was like 13 fantasy points or 14 fantasy points for Jalen Daniels. 13 fantasy points, 44 rushing yards, 226 passing yards, 23-29, but it just didn't show. 13 fantasy points, it didn't show, He didn't run as much as he did as the first game. Brian Robinson Jr., 133 rushing yards, great game. I like Brian Robinson Jr. I think a lot of people forgot about him when they found out Eckler went over to the Commanders. I think they maybe thought that it was going to switch or they were going to, use one more than another. Eckler, he still gets a little reception yards and stuff. He had 11 fantasy points. Noah Brown led the Commanders with 56 receiving yards. Noah Brown, you can sleep on Noah Brown. If Daniels just starts slinging it and letting it fly, Noah Brown's is a good player. McLaren, it just I don't know. I thought it would have been a lot different this year with Daniels, and it didn't really. It's not showing. The first 2 games, something's up, not clicking. Zach Ertz had 62 yards, 10 fantasy points. Good game for the old man. Giants, Daniel Jones had 2 touchdowns. 2 touchdown passes, 178 yards, 18 fantasy points. Not too bad. I watched that game, and it was one of those games that barely scoring, and they were just flip-flopping series, just back and forth, and 3 and out, maybe one first down, but I don't know. It was it was a boring game. Devin Singletary had a great game, 95 yards, 1 touchdown, but he had a fumble, so he would have had a little more fantasy points, but he had 15 fantasy points. Malik Neighbors, the rookie, went off. 127 receiving yards, 1 touchdown, 10 receptions. So Daniels and him, they clicked a little bit. They looked a lot better than the first week. It's just with Daniel Jones out there, we'll see what happens. But I mean, he got him the ball 10 times. So it's just that game was just slow. Wan'Dale Robinson, everybody jumped on that bandwagon. A lot of people picked him up. Everybody picked him on DFS this past week, and everybody picked him up on the FanDuel and DraftKings. And two reception, 18 yards. That was a big no-no. I don't know, man. I guess there's just certain teams out there. There's certain quarterbacks that you just can't trust. You just can't. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know who's going to have what or what. It's just, I don't know. Just can't trust them. Cincinnati and Kansas City Chiefs. That was man, that was close. Close game. The Bengals had one in their hands, and it just, Joe Burrow, 258 yards, 2 touchdowns, 18 fantasy points. Zach Moss, nothing. Chase Brown, nothing. Don't even want to talk about it. Andre Esovivas, he's the one that's playing for T. Higgins out. He only had two catches for 7 receiving yards. So he's not a big play. I mean, he had 2 touchdowns. He had 2 receiving touchdowns. So, but 14 fantasy points. I mean, no yards. So they're just using him at the goal line. Jamar Chase, 35 yards. Tied in. Mike Gesicki had a great game. I was thinking about picking him up last week, but with him, it's just you just never know. Like last year with Hayden Hurst and Joe Burrow, I thought that he would have been a great player with them. Or the year before when Hayden Hurst was with Cincinnati before he went to Carolina last year, and it wasn't. So he's not, he really don't use Burrow don't really use the tight ends as much as you think, but he had 16 fantasy points this week, and that was good. That was really good. Chiefs, Rashee Rice led the Chiefs pretty much with 18 fantasy points. Pacheco, he's out. Nobody knows how long. He fractured his femur or his fibula. But he's out, and that's going to be big for the Chiefs. I know they have Samaje Perine. They have Carson Steele. Carson Steele might be a good pickup, but they just signed Kareem Hunt today. So, everybody's going to jump on that. Everybody's going to sign Hunt because you know what he did when he was with the Chiefs, and he already knows Reed. He already knows Mahomes. So I don't think Carson Steele is going to see that much. And Hilaire, he's still out with a mental issue. So Mahomes only 14 fantasy points. Pacheco 16. Rashee Rice 18. See, this is another team that you see Worthy go off. You think that they're going to use him, but he didn't have that much volume in the first game. He only touched the ball, I think, 3-4 times, and he had 2 touchdowns. He had 4 points. He had 17 yards. So that's another guy that you're taking a big flip of a coin of. Schuster and Hardman didn't play at all. Sky Moore, or they didn't get no catches at all. Travis Kelce nowhere to be found. Nowhere. I mean, you see freaking Taylor Swift more than you see Kelce. It's crazy. Chiefs won that game by the skin of the teeth, man. Won that game. It just kills me. I think everybody wanted the Bengals to win that game, but Chiefs squeezed one out. But if you need a running back, you can take a chance on Steele. You can take a chance on Hunt. If one of your running backs got hurt, if Pacheco was one of your running backs, I would take a chance on Hunt or Steele. I think I would go with Hunt, to be honest. Rams, Cardinals. Oof. Cardinals are going to the Super Bowl. They're like Raider fans. They win a game, they're going to the Super Bowl. Yeah, Niners lost. Cowboys lost. Everybody, the Cardinals won a game. The Rams are depleted. They lost 4 players on that game. 4. Cooper Kupp out. I mean, the Cardinals were already beating them. The Cardinals came in hot at home field advantage. They came out hot. Kyler Murray led the whole team with 28 fantasy points, went off. Or Marvin Harrison led the whole team with fantasy point 32. 130 yards, 2 touchdowns. Marvin Harrison went off. James Conner had a great game, 122 rush yards. It's like the Rams didn't even show up. They go play Detroit, look great. Sunday Night Football, first week, go play Cardinals. Cardinals look like dog against Buffalo in the second half. Rams come in, get smoked. Hey, I give it to you, Cardinal fans. You guys smoked them. It was a great game. Kyler looked good, But but just because they won one game doesn't mean they go to the Super Bowl. They win next week. Okay, we'll see how they're doing, but just relax. It's like Raider fans. You win one game, they're going to the Super Bowl. Trey McBride had 67 yards, 18 points. Cardinals defense had a good game. Stafford nowhere to be found. Me and Lonnie had a great team on FanDuel this week. We won $20, but if Stafford and Kupp would have did anything, 15 each, 20 each, like they've been, we would have been in the honeys. We would have been in the honeys. So, Kieran Williams, 25 rushing yards, 1 touchdown. Atwell, Kupp, Robinson, all 7 points. Tyler Johnson. So, we all thought Tyler Johnson would have been a big one this week because he did great last week with Naku out. But this coming up week, you're going to have to look at Tutu Atwell and Demarcus Robinson, Tyler Johnson with Kupp out also. Kupp has a high ankle, and he might be out a little longer than – they're saying he might be out a little longer than expected. So, hey, the Cardinals smoked him this game. We were wrong. So, good for you. Pittsburgh, Denver. 13-6. Oh, man. One of them yawners again. Broncos can't score a touchdown. Steelers, they one passing touchdown. Steelers' offense is awful until a team can score 20. I'm telling you. Whoever scores 20 in a Pittsburgh Steelers game wins. First one at 20 wins. So, Fields, 117 passing yards. Nothing, 27 rushing yards, not even what he used to. I already seen something this week that they say Justin Fields is the week 3 starter. I don't know. We'll see. Pickens, 4 fantasy points. If you have anybody on Pittsburgh's offense, don't play him. Just Najee. I mean, yeah, he's the only one that you take a flyer on. Maybe he gets a weak team. I don't know, but it's just bad. That Pittsburgh offense is really bad. That's not a Mike Tomlin's team. It's just crazy. It's crazy how they're winning. They're just winning with defense. 13 fantasy points on defense. Fairmouth had 39 receiving yards. And Denver just, Bo Nix is, 246 passing yards against a good Steelers defense. 2 picks, 10 fantasy points. Denver's hurting too. They don't know their identity on receiving. Their offense. Josh Reynolds had a great game, 93 yards. Cortland Sutton, I would not be surprised if he's traded this year. I seen a rumor that they were trying to trade him to the Niners. They tried to trade him to, but I think the Chiefs. I think there was a bunch of other teams out there, and they didn't want it. They wanted more for him. I don't think I can see him being traded by the trade deadline. Javonte Williams. Everybody has so much high hope for this guy to rest one extra year. After his injury, thought that this year would have been the year. He's not looking that great either. Looking really bad, to be honest. I promised I wasn't going to pick him, and I ended up picking him in the end, and he ain't doing nothing. Dulacek, thought he would have been a great tight end this year for Denver, and it's just the guy has 240 passing yards, Knicks, and nothing. 16 receiving yards for a tight end, 4 fantasy points. So not too great either there. The Sunday night game, Chicago, Houston, Caleb Williams, struggling. I wouldn't pick him until he shows us what's up. He's a great, talented player. He's having a hard time. 174 passing yards, 2 interceptions. Khalil Herbert, 3 rushing yards, 8 points. Swift, 18 yards. I think they need to give Roshan a chance. Swift's getting smacked. Herbert's getting smacked. 2 small running backs. Give Roshan Johnson a chance. I don't get it. They haven't done nothing. Nothing at all. Like, come on. Eberflus, garbage. You guys should be 0-2 right now. It's like, man, you got this guy Eberflus ain't. I don't know. We don't want to start this already, but come on, that's bad. DJ Moore, 53 passing receiving yards, 11 points. Rome Odunze doesn't look like the Rome Odunze everybody thought he was going to be. 33 receiving yards, 5 fantasy points. He does not even look close to Xavier Worthy or Malik Neighbors. Not even close. Not even close to Marvin Harrison Jr. He doesn't look like the 3rd receiver drafted this year. Not yet. Cole Kmet, 27 receiving yards. Houston still hasn't clicked to me. They still haven't got their firepower down. They still haven't got CJ Stroud still hasn't rock and rolled yet. He's still slowing down. He's still, he's not doing what we all thought he would have did yet. I drafted him. Everybody drafted him high. Not only high, but, I thought he would have been something. He can't run, so you're just, it's all about his arm. But 260 passing yards, 1 touchdown, 14 fantasy points. Come on, man. Come on. Let's go. I mean, you guys are winning, but let's go. Get that in. You got 3 good receivers. Joe Mixon, 8 fantasy points. He came back to earth. Nico Collins, fire. 135 yards, 30 points. That's the thing. He is clicking with the guy he clicked with last year, Diggs. He did all right last game. This game, 37 yards. Tank Dell, I hope it's not true, and I hope it's not going to happen, but I hope he's not the one out, I hope they don't leave him out. I mean, there's only so much you could throw to, right? I mean, Robert Woods played this past game, but Tank Dell, he only had 1 catch for -3 yards. Dalton Schultz had 21 yards. I don't know if it's just too much to get around or what, but I think they'll get there. They have too much talent not to start just blowing teams out. Monday night game, great game. I thought it was a great game. Atlanta won that game. Cousins still looks rusty. 2 touchdowns, but he still looks rusty. It still doesn't look like he can move around the pocket too well. He had a lot of, he was 20 of 29, 17 fantasy points. Bijan had 97 rushing yards. Great game. 16 fantasy points. Had some receiving yards. Darnell Mooney, using him a lot. He had 7 targets, 3 catches, 88 receiving yards, 1 touchdown. Drake Ludden, 17 fantasy points. I mean, this team could score some points. I mean, that's 3 guys that were over 15 fantasy points. Kyle Pitts had a slow game, slow day with 20 yards. Atlanta could score some points. I mean, like if you look on their team on paper, they can score some points. I mean, look at Tyler Algier had 53 rushing yards. It's just hopefully Raheem Morris could get that team going. Their defense didn't look too bad. They did pretty well with the Eagles. Jalen Hurts only had 183 passing yards, 1 pick, 1 touchdown, 24 points, though. He has to run one in. Saquon had 17 points, 95 rushing yards. Devonta had a great game with AJ out. They say AJ might miss more than just 1 game, so keep that in mind. Jahan Dotson, like I was going to say, maybe go pick Jahan Dotson up. He only had 1 catch. Goddard, not too bad a game. I mean, 38 yards, not as good as we thought. Like me and Lonnie was talking before that game yesterday. Oh, Goddard's probably going to be the one. Goddard's going to be the one. Goddard didn't have nothing. So this week coming up, New York Jets and the New England Patriots in New York. You know what? That's, the Jets going to win this game. I think Breece Hall's going to have a great game. I know that the run that New England's defense has been holding back, but I want to see what Braylon Allen does again this week and see if they're going to take a lot of touches away from Breece Allen, or from Breece Hall. But I think Breece Hall's going to have a good game. Garrett Wilson's going to have a good game. It's probably not going to be a high-scoring game, but I think Jets defense is going to show up a little bit more this week. I think they're going to give a Brissett some issues. I think anything play Ramondre. The Jets running defense ain't as strong as everybody thinks. Pollard had 67 rushing yards. The Niners had over 200, and Stevenson just been playing good. He had a good game against Seattle too. So if anything, I say the Jets win this game. Recap of this week is just Dallas. Dallas did not look good for a team that looked as good as they did against Cleveland. Thought it was a big difference. A lot of hope for the Dallas fans, and then what the Saints did to them. Yeah, the Niners lost and Cincinnati lost. The Ravens lost. Like Cincinnati losing the Chiefs, that's not a shocker. But the Ravens losing the Raiders, I don't know if that's worse than Dallas losing or the Niners losing. The Ravens are in trouble more, I think, if anything. The Ravens just do not – their defense don't look as strong as they did last year. Lamar just can't find rhythm. He's going to try too hard and do it himself, and it's just not going to work. I know Harbaugh will he'll figure it out with Lamar, but I think just no receiving is pretty rough with them right now. Dallas is just the big one to me. You know, Dallas that's bad. The way they lost was bad. At home, their defense got ran over. Kamara ran them over. Niners, Shanahan tried to outsmart everybody, and he outsmarts himself. That's just you know what, you get what you get. You get what you deserve. You know, it's like going to the Super Bowl last year and a couple years ago. Before that, might be too much for him, to be honest. You know, like I said, Purdy didn't have a bad game. You know, but I mean, you got one of your best. I mean, your best players out, and then you have your other best player, Debo, coming in next week. He's out. So good wins for Cardinals. It happened at all. The way they played Detroit, close game, but then now they're depleted. So you know what? It was a good week. It was a really unpredictable week, and week 3's coming up. Be me and Lonnie. Catch you on the next one.